as a medical assistant also.
Your father's a dermatologist? You work in his office?
No, but I had a friend who was a dermatologist.
So how do you do that? How do you do that at home?
At home, like at my hometown, like in Connecticut, I did. Not at home, literally. Good morning, Rob.
Chapter 9, we have been learning that the place, the home grounds of the animal soul, the Jewish animal soul, is in the heart, on the left side of the heart, and the home grounds, the home team. In the game, when the home team, when the team is at home, they have an advantage. The home team is in the brain. Godly soul is rooted in the brain. And from the brain, it extends its influence on all the organs of the body, including the heart. We just said the animal soul's in the heart, and the animal soul's in the left side of the heart, and the godly soul finds its way into the right side of the heart. The left side of the heart is filled with blood, which is the source of passion and emotion and energy. And the right side of the heart is where the godly soul can come in with all its sensitivity to godliness, compassion, mercifulness, and so on. And it will result, if the animal soul will result in all the kinds of emotions we learned about in chapter 1, right? Pride and arrogance from fire, lust from water, idle talk from air, and lethargy and depression from earth. The godly soul, these 4 elements from the right side of the heart, will lead to love of Hashem. When a person since it's rooted in the brains, so a person uses his brains to meditate and to think about things that awaken love. Like this morning, we have the exercise of looking up and seeing the beautiful sky that Hashem creates for us, and remember, and thinking about how immense and powerful is his creation, and how extraordinary in every detail. We think about every creature, the wisdom implanted in the consciousness of every creature. They can't think, they can't reason, but they know how to survive. And each creature has its own set of gifts that enables it to flourish and continue its species. Amazing, it's amazing. Scientists, botanists, biologists don't cease to wonder about it. I once knew a doctor who was a skin doctor. He used to marvel at the wondrous qualities of skin that can continually reproduce themselves. Okay. So by meditating on the greatness of Hashem, which we do in our brains, in our mind, this causes us, this will awaken love of Hashem in our hearts. And similarly, when we think about the beauty of Hashem's creation and the wonders of everything, then it makes us it fills our hearts with happiness that we're on the good team, that we're able to do things. We have the privilege to be connected to such a great Hashem. You know, when you hear stories about the greatness of the Rebbe, so good morning, Soleh.
How are you?
Baruch Hashem. When we hear stories about the greatness of the Rebbe, the wondrous things that he performs, it makes us very happy that we have a connection with him. You know, I read a story, and sometimes the stories I like most about the Rebbe are not the big miracle stories, because everything he does is a miracle, but the things that he makes them seem so natural. You know, like there was a child, a very, very young child that swallowed an open safety pin. And it got stuck in his throat, and they were terrified. The doctors didn't know what to do. And if to do an operation, they would have to slit open his throat to get the safety pin out. They were afraid. It was, you know, it was open. It could puncture the windpipe. Or could go into the stomach, puncture the stomach. And they didn't know what to do. And before they did anything, before they allowed the doctors to operate, they called the Rebbe. And the Rebbe said they shouldn't worry. But what they should do is they should lower a magnet. The man just pulled out the pin. Brilliant. Brilliant. The most brilliant doctor didn't think of it, but it's so obvious. How did they lower it? They probably, you know, put him to sleep so that he wouldn't feel the pin going down his throat. He wouldn't gag. So obvious. That's wisdom. Wisdom reveals the obvious. Excuse me. I just read a story yesterday, another amazing story. Oh, it was published just last week. About a boy who was hard of hearing, couldn't hear anything. And the first few years of his life, they had to choose between teaching him sign or teaching him to speak. They chose to teach him to speak, which was very hard. And then came an age when he had to go to school. Oh, there's Yaira, wow. And they didn't know the public school system had a much better program for children who were disabled or had problems of hearing. So they thought that would be the best place for him to go. But they wanted him to have a Jewish education. So they would hire a tutor to come after school and teach him about Judaism. And they asked the Rebbe, what did he think of this idea? And the Rebbe said, just the opposite. To them, that was out of the box. To think different, this seemed to be the only solution for them. The Rebbe said, no, just the opposite. Send him to a Jewish school with his brothers and get the teacher to come and tutor him in English. And nobody thought of it. They said, but Rebbe, but the program is so much better in the public schools. Rebbe said, yeah, but think about how is he going to feel when he sees all his older brothers getting on the bus to go to yeshiva, and he's going to a different school. He's going to feel terrible. He's going to hate school, and he's going to feel different, and it's going to affect his character and his future. And don't worry about his hearing. And there is such a thing that they're experimenting with now, says the Rebbe, where they drill a hole in the skull and connect wires to the area of the brain that takes in the hearing. There will come a time that when they work, right now it's risky, but they'll get it down pat. And when that time comes, then you can have the operation. That's what happened. That's exactly what happened. Saved the child's life, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And nobody thought of it. I love those kind of stories. It's not like a person was sick and the Rebbe gave a bracha and they just got better, you know? Well, of course, everything worked out for this child because he had the Rebbe's bracha. And it's said in the interview that all the time he was in school, he had confidence. He was never upset because he knew that the time would come when his problem would be solved, and he had the Rebbe's bracha in his pocket for when it would happen. Well, when you think of something like that, of the beauty of the wisdom of the Torah, because the Rebbe, whatever the Rebbe says is Torah. The Rebbe is not just a smart person. It fills your heart with joy and happiness that you're here in the Rebbe's yeshiva. So we see that love and happiness like this are motivated and generated from the brain, where the Yetzer Tov, the godly soul, is sending out its influence from the brain. Okay, that's by way of review. For all the new students, Sharon and Shirel and Soleh, and anybody who doesn't remember, I want to review one basic exercise, which is on the way to school in the morning to yeshiva, look up. Be sure, if you looked up today, you saw a beautiful sky. Did you see where the sun was? When we started teaching this class, the sun at 8 o'clock was on the rooftops. Just, right, remember? Just getting higher than the rooftops, so you'd see it through the trees. Now, the sun is 1 o'clock high. If the sky is a clock, the sun was up there at 1 o'clock. It used to be down here like at 4 in the afternoon. We see these things, they're wondrous. And they remind us, lift up your eyes on high. In Hebrew is Su'u, lift up. Morem, on high. Einechem, your eyes. Those are those three letters. First letters of those three words spell the word Shema. That's what you should have in mind when you say Shema in the morning.
I remember once my brother said to me, so you should look up, because most of the people look down on the street, like on the floor.
Like a dog.
Yeah, you should look up, like top of the buildings, much nicer. And he's right.
That's right. It's inspiring to see the greatness of Hashem over us. Because when you look up, you see the sky is infinite. It's vast. It's looking down, and they call it tunnel vision, right?
The sea too. The sea.
What?
The sea is infinite too.
I can't hear what she's saying.
The ocean, the sea.
The ocean, yeah, the ocean's very inspiring, because it never stops.
Yeah.
The waves. You can sit and watch the waves for hours. Or a river, you see a river flowing down, to watch the river. Okay, now we're ready. In the right corner, we have the Yetzer Tov, and in the left corner, the Yetzer Hara. Page 140, we're moving on now to the war zone. In the bottom of page 140, Hine Ksiv, it's written in the Torah, in Parshas Toldos. Uloim Yamatz. Yitzchak married Rivka, and they couldn't have children for 10 years. Well, she was young. She was only 3 when they got married. So then they started really trying to have children. And another 10 years went by, and no children came along. And so they prayed with all their might. Rivka, who was a righteous woman, and her husband Yitzchak, who was a totally righteous person, they prayed, and their prayers were heard, and Rivka became pregnant with a child. And she experienced terrible, terrible suffering, terrible pain and discomfort in her pregnancy. And she didn't know what was going on. And she said, if this is what it's all about, why do I even want it? So she went to the Rebbe. Who was the Rebbe at that time? The Rebbe was the son of Noah. His name was Shem. She went to the Rebbe and asked him what's going on. And he said, you should know you have two nations in your womb. You have twins, and they are fighting for control of the world. Yaakov and Esav, and they will continue to fight forever until Moshiach comes. And when one is up, the other is down, and vice versa. When the other is up, then he will be down. So as long as the children of Yaakov cleave to Torah and mitzvahs, they can prevail over Esav. But if we fall by the way and we become neglectful of Torah and mitzvahs, which are the heritage of Yaakov, then the children of Esav can gain power over us and afflict us. And that is really the source of anti-Semitism in the world. Because all the kings of Europe, this is my theory, I never saw it written in a book, but I'm sure somewhere someone else must have come up with this idea. Esav was a king. He was a powerhouse, a powerful individual. He was an unscrupulous person, a warmonger, a murderer, an idolater, a rapist, a terrible person. But he was powerful. He was a powerful king, and from him came kings. So you ask the question, where did the kings of Europe come from? The kings who ruled the countries of Europe, France and England and Spain, the Kaisers and the Tsars and the Romanovs, where did they come from? I think they all came from Esav. Some of them were more enlightened than others. Not all the children of Esav were bad. I mean, we spoke about yesterday Antoninus. Antoninus was the Caesar, the ruler of Rome, and he submitted himself to the authority of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. You see, because, and it's pointed out, I saw this in the Kahas Chumash, most of the people who converted to Judaism over the centuries were from Esav. Christians. Not many converted from Islam. Not many from China or Japan. Very, very few. Because let's remember, Esav was the son of Rivka and Yitzchak. And he had powerful holy energies in him. Why did Yitzchak want to give him a bracha? Because he felt that he would be the champion of God in this world with his tremendous power. He knew who Esav was. And he wanted to give him the blessings because he felt that the power could be harnessed to bring Mashiach into the world and make the world the place that Hashem wants it to be. But he was wrong, and Rivka knew he was wrong. Husbands and wives don't always agree. She made sure that Yaakov got the blessings, because if Esav got the blessings, it would have been a disaster. But his anger was kindled against his twin brother Yaakov for eternity until Moshiach will come. Okay, so this is what Shem, the prophet, who was the Rebbe in his time, said to her. When Rivka said, what's going on? Why am I suffering these terrible pains? He said, because one nation is in your womb. You have two nations in your womb. Those little babies are going to be nations. They're going to grow up to be powerful kings, and they're struggling already. One is struggling with the other. Explanation. This is powerful. Ladies, girls, this is here, the whole history of the world in these words, these prophetic words. Of the last 3,300, maybe 700 years, last 3,700 years, here in this puzzle. How are we supposed to understand it? Oh, This is Vasya. Good. I'm glad you're here. I hope you're also glad you're here. Did I see Rivka come in?
Yes.
Hi, Rivka. And your ear, where's your name? Here we are, your ear of cats. A little break for attendance. Where's Rachel O'Connor? She's sick?
Yeah. And Rachel as well.
What? Shirel. Cohen Saban. Sharon Sontag.
Yes.
Okay. Vasya Yagdana. Okay. Fine.
You didn't say it.
I marked you here, Sole. Let me check. I think I did. Yeah, I'm here, you're here.
Thank you.
Were you here yesterday?
Yes.
Hiya, Atkins, I mark you.
I thought, thank you. I thought.
You checking up on me? But, okay.
Did you mark?
Did I mark you? Yes.
Thank you.
So here's the explanation. Fasten your seatbelts. Okay, this is very central Jewish thought. Your body is called a small city. Now, in the olden days, like before 200 years ago, in the middle of the 19th century, in the middle of the 1800s, there were great changes took place in the world. That's when all the revolutions began. Did you realize that?
Yeah.
Italy before then was city-states. Venice was a country. Florence was a country. Cities were countries. Every city had a ruler, a duke, and the duke had an army and a dungeon, and he ran everything in the city. Like Troy and Athens and Sparta, there were cities. There was no Greece. There were cities. Each city was a walled city. It was an empire. Okay, so it says that in the 1800s, these cities overthrew the dukes. We had a people's movement starting from France for the French Revolution, and then it spread through Europe. And people's governments began, which eventually led to the 50 years later, because the Alter Rebbe fought against Napoleon, he pushed off the revolution in Russia by 50 years. So 50 years after all the European revolutions in Italy and France and Germany, Austria, and so on, 50 years later came the Russian Revolution with the Bolsheviks and all the suffering that they wrought upon the people. Now this explains, and then cities came together and became unified, and so we had the emergence of countries instead of cities. Countries with many cities in them. Your body is called a small city. Imagine that your body is a city-state. And there's another city that wants to take over. Like nowadays, what we're witnessing in front of us. Mr. Putin wants to take over Ukraine. He decided, why should Ukraine have all the income that they have from the Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. Why should they have it? Let me have it. Used to belong to the Tsar, used to belong to the communists. I'm going to take it back. Well, he's having some problems there. All this is prophesied, by the way, in a medrash called Yalkut Shimoni, the collection of teachings of Rabbi Shimon. It predicts that when Moshiach is going to come, there's going to be a huge war between two nations. It says one nation will be like an Arab nation. Oh, we don't see Arabs in the present war. And one nation will be Aram. The Rebbe said Aram is like America. Aram means exalted, lofty, or the Rebbe said a superpower. Well, we are seeing this as a superpower. And one nation is going to lose the war, and then it's going to come back and destroy the world. And people are going to be terrified and going to be running here and running there and saying, what's happening? Is the Abish going to destroy the world? I mean, we have to think we are on the verge of a nuclear war. You know, nations are arming themselves like crazy. And China is getting involved with these balloons, flying objects. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. Who knows what's next when they start sending armed balloons? Who knows? We don't know. And the Abish is going to announce, Moshe is going to come and announce from the rooftop of the Beis HaMikdash, is what it says in the Yalkut. Children, my children, don't be afraid. Everything I'm doing is only for your benefit. The time of the Geula has arrived. That's what it says. That's famous medrash. When the Rebbe started talking about Moshiach, somebody discovered this medrash. And then the Gulf War, everybody thought that it was about the Gulf War. And it could have been about the Gulf War. But Moshiach didn't come, but things got moving underway. Okay, so here's the idea that your body is like a small city. Now imagine Ukraine is a city and Russia is a city, and they're at war. One wants to take over the other, and they want to survive. So that's what it says here. One nation will be struggling and waging war over another nation, two kings. Each one wishes to capture and dominate and rule the other, so that all the people in the conquered city will follow and obey and submit to the king of the conquering city. And that means to pay taxes and not to speak against the government and to be loyal citizens and so on, but to be subjects of this other country. Dahainu, page 141. Each king wants to conquer the other city, lahanhig yeshaveha, and to dominate the citizens of that city, that they should all follow his rules. And that they should obey his orders and his edicts and his decrees, whatever he decides that they have to do. In the same way, the two souls in you, in your heart and in your mind, we said that your heart is the animal soul, your mind is the godly soul, they are at war. Helokis, V'chayunis haBahamas, and the animal soul in the left side of the heart, Shemi HaKlippa, which comes from Klippa, Nilchames zu imzu, they are fighting a constant war. Al Haguf, for control of your body, which is the city. So the city is the position, is the key that they want to conquer. Two kings want to conquer the city. One is like the godly soul, one is like the animal soul. And the city is your body, is you. V'chol evarav, and all of your limbs. Shelokis, because the godly soul, and now the Alter Rebbe is going to go into a long description of the godly soul. So we talked about the animal soul and the evil of the animal soul for the last couple of chapters. Now we're going to go into a long analysis and description of how the godly soul works. It's fascinating. She'elokis, the godly soul, page 141 in the middle. Chepto Retzena, its desire and its passion. Shetehi levada hamasheles alav, that it wants to be the sole ruler in your life. Uman higase, and the leader of everything that you do. Is that bad? No, it's your godly soul. What else? Who else do you want to follow? So we're all on him. That he's the good guy. The godly soul, maybe she is the queen that we want to be in chess. The queen is very powerful. We want to follow the ruler, the godly soul. And every limb of your body is going to go in the way that the godly soul wants it to go. So we see by the Rebbeim, for instance, our holy leaders, our holy rabbis, by the time they were youngsters, 5 years old, sometimes even earlier, they knew the Shulchan Aruch. They knew what was required of a Jewish person, how to conduct his life, and they trained their bodies, just like you train yourself how to ride a bicycle, or a dancer trains herself or himself how to make all the ballet movements, and how to stand on their toes and to do pirouettes and to do all kinds of leaps. And it's training. It takes practice, hours and hours of practice. And that's what they did, the Rebbeim, holy tzaddikim, from a very early age. And their bodies became completely trained to carry out the will of Hashem, which is written clearly in the Code of Jewish Law, in the Shulchan Aruch. And this is what the godly soul wants, that every limb of your body, like your hand, is just trained to give charity. Your eye is trained to look on a holy thing and not to look on something that's not holy. Not to be tempted by something that's against the will of God. There was a priest in the time of the Tzemach Tzedek who knew that the Tzemach Tzedek really, his holiness was a threat to the priest, because the priest was a faker. He was an evil person. And he had a beautiful wife, because, in Russia, the Greek Orthodox, they marry. In the West, the Christians don't, the Catholics don't marry women. At least that's what they say. They do things secretly. They have nephews. They don't have children, they have nephews. That's where the term nepotism comes from, favoring your nephews, giving them jobs. Okay, so he had a wife and she was very beautiful, and they decided they're going to embarrass the Tzemach Tzedek and show that he's corrupt like everybody else. So this priest's wife came on some pretext to see the Tzemach Tzedek, or maybe they had to be, and she came dressed immodestly. Well, immodest in those days wasn't like immodest nowadays. It was far less, but it was immodest, nonetheless. It was immodest. They wanted to see that you ever heard the term ogle, to ogle someone? That's English. It means when a a person sees a beautiful woman and she's not dressed, or even if she is, but she's beautiful, he ogles her, as he gazes at her. So they want to see that Tzemach Tzedek would gaze at the beauty of this woman. What happened? She came to the room, he vomited. It was totally disgusting to him. So the person is trained that he has nothing to do with anything against the will of God. It's repulsive, horrible. So that's what it means. That's what the godly soul wants, that every limb of your body, every response is appropriate to the will of God. You see something against the will of God, you just don't see it. Either you don't see it or you immediately look away. You don't look, when something, you say, how can I control my eyes? Things just sort of appear, you can't control. No, it's true. If a bus goes by and they have an immoral picture on the outside of the bus, and you happen to notice the bus, it's not going to be held against you. But if you take a second look because you don't want to miss what it was, then that will be held against you. It's the second look that counts. So all the organs would be subject to the discipline and the guidance and the rules of the godly soul. Ubatelim etzal lagamri, and totally subservient to the will of the godly soul. And more than that, to be a merkava, to be a chariot. What is a chariot? A chariot is like a taxi. Chariot doesn't go anywhere on its own. Chariot goes where the driver directs it to go. In return for which, the driver takes care of the chariot. The taxi driver has to take care of his taxi. So the godly soul wants the body should be like a taxi, that we will go exactly where the godly soul wants it to go. And it says about the fathers, and we can assume about the mothers of the Jewish people as well, that they were a chariot to the will of God. A merkava is, in Hebrew, the word for a chariot. They use that word in modern Hebrew to mean a military tank, a merkava. Merkava is a chariot. So the godly soul wants that our body should be a merkava to Hashem. It says about the fathers of the Jewish people, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, that they were a merkava to the will of Hashem. They did not do anything. Their limbs would not do anything against the will of God. So that when Abraham took Yitzchak to the Akedah, to offer him up as a sacrifice, it says he sent out his hand to take the slaughtering knife. It says, why didn't it just say he took the slaughtering knife? What do you have to send your hand? Because the hand was a merkava, didn't want to go. It wasn't Hashem's will that he should slaughter his son. But his mind thought that's what Hashem wanted. So his mind was prevailing over his body. But the body was a chariot. It wouldn't do something against the will of God. We will continue next week, Bezos Hashem. Ya'ira, I hope to see you then, Monday. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Good Shabbos, everybody.
Shabbos.
Vision is this other mark of Simcha. We have to have a lot of singing, dancing, and happiness, and joy. It's a month of miracles and happiness, a month of good health. Most important. Anybody needs a report, Shalem, she has a report.
¿Qué onda? ¿Deciste algo?
No.
No? Because Leah sent me that it's no. Sunday night, she wanted to do something because it's her birthday. And I said, Leah, ¿was it her birthday?
Okay, let's do it all.